spendthrift luxuriates in the past a little. I hope you'll luxuriate along with me, if you're old enough. Oh, for those grandly squandered hours, with you, sunbeams and birds and early flowers, and dreams as young as our world was new, when morning came on dancing feet, tapping the merriest, veriest beat, and down the street, decked out for spring, the birds sang sweet as birds can sing, and the daffodils displayed their gold. Behold, behold, for the look of you, sunbeams and birds and early flowers and dreams that could have come true. Where are those richly patterned hours, all spent before we knew? And signpost, it rather mourns, perhaps, the turning we should have taken. I think I have not found what I was after, missing the turn-off I was meant to take, diverted very possibly by laughter of children in the sunshine, by a lake, magnolia trees in brief and lovely bloom, a lilt of voice, a smile, a trick of light, the windowed picture of a firelit room, or up the morning wind a soaring kite. There was a signpost once, some distance back, abruptly there, one young and sparkling day, directing down so dull and rough a track, I thought to find another on my way, and hurried after April, to a wood of birds returned, and trilliums almost out. I might retrace my wanderings, if I could be certain of that signpost, which I doubt. And once again the lure of spring is calling, with pussy willows fat along the bough. Perhaps when time's barometer is falling, I'll journey back, but God forgive, not now. The Ferry Fiddler, I just always have to read it because it's about Carnarvon up in Halliburton, and I love the place. Down there, beside Carnarvon Road, where comes, I found a fairy fiddler making music out of dreams. And when I asked him for a song, he looked at me and smiled, and warned me that he did not play for anybody's child. Suppose, I said, suppose I were the daughter of a king. Why, then, oh then, he chanted, then I would not play a thing. Suppose my father were the hero of all time. I'd turn away and never play. He capered to his rhyme. And if my father were a poet, that would never do. The builder of vast empires? No, I would not play for you. Just say he was a dreamer, then, who failed to reach the moon. Now, that, the fairy fiddler cried, demands a splendid tune, and all the hills and all the sky re-echoed to the sound, and woodlands wondered at the theme for miles and miles around. But what they could not comprehend, who listened half afraid, was that the fairy's fiddle woke the ghosts of dreams betrayed, retrieving visions from the dust, to let them soar unfurled beyond the starry limits that we think of as our world. And there, beside Carnarvon Road, with 12 Mile all aglow, I thanked the fairy fiddler for the probing of his bow. I thanked him, and he winked at me, for anybody's child, and vanished with his fiddle. Just an elf man, old and wild, who knew too well the fugitive and pilgrim dreams of men by Carnarvon Road. I have not come on him again. In my books, I often put what I call portraits of people. It's not always the most important people in my life, but it's people who have left a picture in my mind. This one is Milly. She was of earth and sky and deep still pools of water where young otters play. Flowers were hers to hold and rocks to climb. Kindred was she to sunshine and shadow, rain, wind, and all things of love and dream. I walk with the wind across the grass of a meadow, and there, sitting on a garden wall that is low and moss-grown and warmed by the sun, at any moment I expect to find her. Boy About a Bear is the way I think a little boy would think about a bear. If I should ever meet a bear, I'm sure I'd run away. I wish I wouldn't, 'cause I know I'd really like to stay and stroll along with him and talk of sleeping in a den curled up and cozy till the spring comes waking bears again, of playing leapfrog with his cousins grown fat on wildflower honey and blueberries for the eating when summer days are sunny. If I should meet a bear, I'd like to hail, "How do you do?" and chat with him of many things, and he might like it too. But then he mightn't. Who can trust a stranger's friendly smile when all the woods are hunter-filled and bear rugs much in style? He might reach out his furry arms, embracing me so snug, I'd never get back home to tell the tale of that great hug. If I should meet a bear, I'd have to turn and run, and that's too bad, because I'm sure a bear could be such fun. Dialogue in a Spring Dusk is about another little boy, or perhaps the same one, but when he's very sleepy. Little boy, where have you been all the day long in the sun and the wind? Up on the hilltop, where maples are budding, or down in the valley, where spring floods are rushing? Little boy, what did you find to capture that rapture of spring in your eyes? I patted the catkins so soft by the river, and talked with the wind that was caught in a willow, and climbed with the wind to the top of a mountain, and dreamed a brave dream. But what was the joy of the secret you found then to make your eyes gleam? The secret I could not and would not be telling. The birds know it well, and the flowers hold it fast in the depths of their essence, but the flowers cannot tell. If I listen and listen to what the winds whisper, to what the birds sing, but you've already heard it. You've heard the winds whisper, the birds sing of spring. Oh, that was too long ago. Time crowds out time. What makes that new star so bright in the sky, so high, so high? But you've fallen asleep, and your spring day is over. What of the autumns to follow and follow? Will you remember you heard it and listened? The secret of spring? You with the closed eyes, who climbed a great mountain and dreamed a brave dream. An old tale is of my own childhood. The old spell of a tale once read lies warmly on the hour, my mother reading by the bed, and all the magic power of once upon a time 'twas told, I can't remember. But oh, it was a tale of gold. And still I keep the ember of that deep joy I cannot tell, that stirs the heart to tears. The old enchantment of its spell prevails across the years. And once upon a time there slept a happy child who dreamed, while through the wide night shadows crept to quench the light that gleamed, the light that gleamed, the house that stood beyond the garden gate. And I would find it if I could, if only time would wait. Kimball Town is just an imaginary town I'm not quite sure that I ever really want to find, because then it mightn't be there. Oh, Kimball is a small town, a step from end to end, and Kimball is a far town, around the ocean's bend. But I will follow on any wind that sings to Kimball Town, my Thimble Town, where dreams are born with wings. And I will find a house there, with windows in the gable, and oaks beyond the garden patch, and brown kine in the stable. And I will have my tea there, laid on a fireside table. And there will be such food for tea, bees' honey, thick on crumpets, and pears and cheese and marzipan. Hunt out your rusty trumpets and speed me on to Kimball Town, around the wide world's bending. And should you swear there's no such town, I'll go right on defending my Kimball Town, that Thimble Town, where dreams are never ending. Now the title poem. It's called The Time, and it's from The Handful of Hours. When I remember you, I go with music, down ways of fragrance, sunlight everywhere, the leafing boughs between. And all wildflowers are there, like notes of music, against the vibrant wonder of the young spring green. When I remember hours that we have spent in sudden great discoveries, new content, my dancing heart must sing. My widened world is overbrimmed with light. When I remember you, there is no winter night. The time is early morning in the spring. I hate a day without you in it. Every hour and every minute strikes discord in my heart. Every thought I cannot share, telling you how much I care, is like the salt sting of a tear. But oh, the day that holds your nearness is like a lovely child in dearness, with magic in his laughter. And every second flying by repeats with joy, my love and I have this forever after. Do gulls still cry along that stretch of shore? One instant with a start I hear them, catch a glimpse of sky and flying cloud and waves that lift and curl and fling. One startled instant, then the roar of traffic closes down upon the sound, and deep at life's lonely core I am disturbed. Do they cry as shrilly, wildly, lornly as before? The gulls above wind-flung waves, sands beaten smooth as pavement? Do clouds fly, blown which way in the sky by winds that whip the bay? Men say they've changed the travelled way from what we used to know. But I must find the road, must go back the new way back, must be there as before, for I have heard from that far sky the gulls along the shore. Ash on the Wind is from After Dusk. I remember a teacher of mine always used to get it mixed up and call it Wind in the Ash, which has no meaning whatsoever as far as the poem goes. She struck the match and watched his letters burn in draught from memory's rustling corridor. His careless words, "Let's dance forever," and her swift reply, "Over death, on eternity's wide floor." Music in the mothy dark, seeking the tardy moon, blending with crickets and garden scents, and the quiring frogs from the warm lagoon. Jarred at his voice, love throbs on in the arms of June, but who can say, beyond November, passion does not die? And her urgent cry, "Not so soon." She fed the flame, remembering champagne in lifted sparkling glasses, laughter in softly shaded gleam, music suddenly grown discordant, mockery of a dream. She spilled the ash from her window and wept, not for golden hours of old champagne and laughter, but for two in a summer garden and one questioning the after. Tomorrow's Sunlight is also from After Dusk, and of course it was a war poem book, mostly. I remember you, Paul. I remember sunlight, too, warm and golden, drenching you in its glory. The buttons of your uniform gleamed, and those tiny bright wings on your breast pulled at my heart. That window was wide to the new delight of the weather, and you stood just there, half turned from me, March wind incredibly soft blowing across your face. And you said, "We're leaving tomorrow." I could not see your eyes. You were looking away, off toward those western hills at bare maple branches, sharp against the sky. But longing was rough in your voice. You said, "It will be April soon, and the woods will come alive." Actress is symbolic of life, I suppose you could say, not necessarily a play actress. Safe in the chantry of her soul, she mourned his going, but laughter lit her course of living, and kindness shone along her day. Her breast had known the ecstasy of passion. She had not missed her cue when love had glanced her way. And now, with foolish tears and show of self-indulgence, how could she mar the climax of the play? Once on a summer's day there was, as many tales begin, a little boy who wept because the tide was coming in to wash away the lighthouse tower that he had built of sand, working through hour on sunny hour to make it tall and grand, grander than Everest, taller even, bright in the darkest sky for men at sea or in the heavens to steer their courses by. It could have been the highest spire on all the western shore, transmitting beams of sound and fire beyond the stars and more. And then the tide came, undermining the structure at its base, lapping, attacking, all consigning to not a grain of trace. A boy conceives a theme to spend in joy of form and height, a beacon peak, and in the end waves and unguarded night. A boy perceives a further gleam to borrow, hill and hollow, brilliant of wing beat, glint of stream, turning from play to follow. Derivative belongs to the night too, but a different kind of night. On the shoulder of earth, like a quiet hand, night lies. So much of peace in the touch, as in the hush of closed eyes, that, forgetful of what has been, and untroubled by what may be, earth sleeps. Beyond the lift and circle of the hour, earth sleeps, while the subconscious drifts into infinity. Infinity, eternity. There is no measure of time, no boundlessness of space to curb, hand on the bridle, and mane bright flowing, the winged pursuit of truth. What is this truth the mind seeks and seeks in the motivating center of existence, where it speaks in the very recurrence of daybreak? Truth is God. There's a poem I often read to the children in schools, and I let the girls be the fairy, because the fairy's very happy, and the boys just love being the elves, because the elf is grumpy. It's called Dialogue on the Edge of Fairyland. Fiddle-dee-dee, sang the fairy. Fiddle-dee-dum, growled the elf. Lovely is she, praised the fairy. Old age will come, warned the elf. Blow all your trumpets, beat on your drum. Lovely is youth, but old age will come. He will be great, bragged the fairy. Wealth will come late, crabbed the elf. Fiddle-dee-dee, fiddle-dee-dum. Time may be late, but riches will come. Will they be wed? Asked the fairy. Sooner be dead, snarled the elf. Fiddle-dee-dee, fiddle-dee-dum. Mortals may die, but weddings will come. Hear the bells chime, laughed the fairy. Nonsense and crime, mourned the elf. Blow all your trumpets, beat on your drum. Marriage is merry, but old age must come. Fiddle-dee-dee, sang the fairy. Fiddle yourself, cried the elf. Fiddle-dee-dum. Untold is a poem I wrote to my husband. I haven't the date exactly, but it was soon after we were married. My love of you is beautiful. No brush could paint such beauty and arrest the glow. Here in the clement shelter of the dusk, I would reveal it, that your soul might know. Would turn it into music finely played, beyond the concept of a master's dreaming, or light of candle, light of star, bright waves of golden grain in wind and sunshine streaming, or poetry. There must be words adept, and words are mine to juggle and construe, but what mere verse of mortal could express a truth as lovely as my love of you? This is called Marth, another of my people portraits. She walks as if to music, like spring wind when March retunes the landscape winter wound. She smiles as summer dreams above a field of clover when the day is honey-filled. And in her speech all beauty sings and blends. When she is gone, a hand draws down the blinds on vital sunshine, quenching music's note to make a draughty vacuum of the night. From Tehran to Zanzibar is a little boy just after he's looked into his geography, or social study as they call it now, I think. From Tehran to Zanzibar, what wonders line the magic way? And is it quite so very far as from my window to a star? Or just the journey of a day? I'd really like to know. And say, how far is it to Samarkand? How far from there to Molokai? Too far for eager wings to fly? Or just a sail from land to land? From Tehran to Zanzibar, I wonder if such places are. If any other boy has seen the marvels that must lie between. Perhaps I'll go before I die, from Samarkand to Molokai, from Petra to Afghanistan, from place to every place, no doubt, that I have read or dreamed about. But most of all, I can't tell why, by land or sea or open sky, I want to go when I'm a man to Zanzibar from Tehran. Sea play is about a little boy in bed again. When Dick was tucked up snug at night, we'd talk about the sea, of jellyfish and sharks that bite, and coral like a tree, and dolphins rolling in a spin high on the ocean floor. And Dick would warn, "Oh, don't go in," eagerly asking, "More?" And we'd go on to crabs, perhaps, deep down in seaweed swirls, and lobsters, not for lobster traps, and oysters growing pearls, the biggest whale, an octopus with arms all long and thin. And Dick would cry, "They can't catch us because we won't go in." And then we'd laugh and talk of things like turtles in the sun, and flying fish that have no wings, and snails that cannot run but move their lodgings as they creep over the sandy floor. And Dick would tumble off to sleep with one last whispered, "More?" June Garden. I don't think you'd call it a love poem, but it was written about my husband and myself when we had a June garden. May this be heaven, where the June wind goes on tiptoe feet among the whispering flowers. This tranquil afternoon of sun-gilt hours and tones of wonderment, an opening rose, a clump of peonies, the green that shows where seeds, late planted, wait for evening hours. This be our heaven, when we yield to powers beyond the outlands that the June wind knows. How we have loved the change of season, fall with tumbling leaves and haze across the sun, the breadth of snow's munificence, and all the stir of spring come back. But choosing one, the choice must be our garden, with the boon of love at hand, in everlasting June. I call this kinship, and it's somewhat homey, fits in a little bit with June garden. Kindred are these rich hands to earth of earth, that work all day at little minor things, pegging the clothes while close a robin sings, or from a wire the cardinal shouts his worth. Kindred are these sure feet to living clay, walking from sink to stove, climbing the stairs, while from the woodlot come the wild, sweet airs of summer's noon to call the heart away. Kindred to God is this frail soul that strives beyond the confines of our worldly trust. Kindred to heaven are these praying lips. Magnificence uplifts the least of lives, even as stars elude our fingertips, and sunlight dances with a fluff of dust. Kitchen Relations follows along the same line, only it's fantasy, and it came from having breakfast with my nephew and his mother coming down, saying, "Where did that crumpled crumpet come from?" "Would you like a crumpled crumpet?" asked the kettle of the pot, "or perhaps a twisted doughnut, or a pepper very hot?" But the pot was out of temper. "You may gleam with stainless steel, but it gives me indigestion just to think of such a meal." Now the stove made heated comment, while the saucepan steamed and stewed, on the utter lack of reason for the pot to be so rude. "By my lid," the pot exploded, nearly jumping off the ledge, and that kettle, with a whistle that puts every nerve on edge, purred the teapot in her cosy, very impolite to shout. "You are somewhat dull to look at, and have not a pouring spout." But it hardly seems a question of appearances so much as a case of fiddle-faddle. Shall we handle it as such? The refrigerator shivered, and the tap let drop a tear, but the chairs began to leapfrog, and the cookie jar to cheer, when the breadboard somersaulted salt and pepper in a race, knives and spoons in ring-a-rosy, cream and sugar, pace for pace. Such a hubbub in the kitchen, every gadget playing catch, till the shears cut at the curtains, and the kitten struck a match. Then the new broom snapped her handle, and the percolator roared, "There'll be order in the kitchen," and the rolling pin was floored. Mildly through the hush that followed came the puzzled kettle's voice. "What a fuss! And all I asked you was to make the simple choice of perhaps a crumpled crumpet, or a pepper very hot, or a tasty twisted doughnut." And the pot's reply, "The lot." Not a teacup in its saucer dared to chatter out of line, till the clock struck 7:30, and the sun looked in to shine on the kitchen's morning quiet. Telltale only on the floor, one new broom with broken handle, and the rolling pin, no more. But the kitchen cat remembers, with a secret kind of grin that excites delicious quiverings to his tail tip from his chin. And the kettle trills his whistle, and the pot cooks up such things that the house is brimmed with magic, and the children's feet have wings. I shall go as a shadow into the world today, unnoticed by the merry-hearted, unobserved by all except the lonely and the grieving, and they will understand not to reach a hand to me, not to touch the shadowy, the grey, and the apart. I shall pass as a shadow among men, down crowded streets of spring budding into flower, through small green parks where children play, not to pause and lean over fences of gardens with bushes leafing out yellow, not to look through polished windows at people smiling and talking together. As a shadow, I shall walk with none to mark my going but the lonely and the grieving, and they only will understand, being shadows in the shadowy land of despair. "This is my March voice," the gentleman said, hoarse with a cold in his throat and his head, and down from James Bay came the wind with a blow, frigid and boisterous and charged with old snow, rousing the trees from their winter-fast sleep, calling to everything, cattle and sheep, "Springtime is yonder, get up and get at it." But warm in his bed with a cold in his head, the man with the March voice just coughed and cried, "Drat it! So rarely do I, as a business tycoon, have time just to laze in my bed until noon. Be damned if I get up today or tomorrow, perhaps the day after." But much to the sorrow of widow and orphans, they carried him out silenced and cold. And the moral? I doubt that even the wind that blew down from James Bay could give you the answer. Suffice it to say, God gives and God takes, and not one has the choice, not even the man with the husky March voice. I've had my daffodils. My spring has come and gone. Now when soft winds blow and the leafing out comes on, nothing remains to show except a tired regret for spring invited in too soon to be well met. And this I have called Recovery. I found a gilded penny and $1 turned to lead, and a little bird unfed, and on my mind a word I'd read, or could have been a word I'd heard and neglected to keep filed away in the index of my head. But the penny was a plaything, and the $1 of no worth, and the little bird was dead. And the word? Then, airily, merrily up the street, the lilt of a whistle, and children with freedom in their voices and their feet. And I covered the bird with leaves from another spring left over, lest the children discover it there. Another spring and another day, with lawns showing green along the way, and daffodils opening their trumpets of gold to rejoice in God's love. Love! That was the word. How could I doubt it? As young and as old as the laughter of children at play, or the song of a bird. "The rose is winter killed," the gardener said, and I could have wept. So tender brittle were those sticks that once had put forth bloom. "Don't take it out," I told him. "Just leave it as it is." He regarded me as he might a retarded child. Then, "Yes, ma'am," he said, "but it won't grow no more. You know that, don't you?" And trudged off to his compost heap, leaving me somewhat foolish with my dead. But I had loved that late rose, yellow, with a wafted scent, lifting the veil from the quick of things, as that strange new bird in the apple tree, when it sings, enriches the moment beyond the aura of rapture streaming. Such had been the being of my rose. Put a coin in my hand, and I'll spend it on visible things, letting the strength of its wealth expand to bluebirds in sunshine and golden wings, violets blown on a lift of wind like fairy laughter. a picture to a far star pinned, of joy ungrown, and after, bird, flower, young pleasure sown, the very instant after, the coin in my emptied hand is a stone, grown heavy with treasure expended, ended. Do you understand? Throw a thought into the thinking of my mind, and I may play with it in pose of rhyme or prose of a kind. And bright in the night of time, words will live a moment, spoken for none to hear but the wind and God's listening ear. If I should fall in love again, it would not be with you, but one who would not hesitate to let my dreams come true. I would not be seduced by spring, soft winds and birds in chime. No, I would steel myself against such lovely things this time. If I should ever love another, I would not give my heart. I'd make a calculated bargain, yielding it part by part, and only on a lend-lease basis, to be returned at order. And I would tape all talk of love safe on a good recorder. If I should dare to love again, the outlook must be clear. But since my heart is still your heart, how do I start from here? If I could rub Aladdin's lamp and be there in a minute, I'd choose a place that has a name with effervescence in it, like Mussoorie or Shining Tree or mellifluent Killaloe, and then I'd rub the lamp again and come back home to you. I'd come back home to common things, like traffic in the street, children shouting in the schoolyard, lilt of dancing feet, flying leaves and high geese flying with the north wind in their wings, dear familiar things of sunshine, love and laughter. If I could have a guarantee of safe return at will, I'd rub the lamp all summer through and have my travel fill. Then in the dusk of one autumn day, just before sleep that night, I'd hide the magic lamp away, out of the very reach of sight, dark and deep in the winter's night. I'd hide the lamp until the spring, the first soft winds of May, and that song they always sing, Manitoulin, Vancouver, Nanaimo, the moon. If I could rub Aladdin's lamp and be back home by noon.